I grew up in a middle school community located at the skirts of a relatively small-sized city in central China. By middle school community, I mean all faculty, staff, and their families, as well as thousands of students lived in a gated large community, which provides literally all facilities one needs for daily life. For example, a canteen, a convenience store, a restaurant, a clinic, an indoor stadium, which also functions as a community-wide meeting space, and a cinema, a gym and running track, of course, a library and classrooms. In other words, unless one really needs to buy some clothing, trendy clothing, or urgent care from the city, there was no need for one to step out of the community for weeks or even months. Probably due to the local culture and my parents' financial situation, I never left this city and its vicinities until I left for college. When I was about 13, 14 years old, one small change occurred, which planted a seed for much larger, much more substantial changes in my life later on. One morning, I was having breakfast. My father bought from the school canteen. In his office, which he shared with probably 9 other colleagues. I found one book from the desk of one of his colleagues, who was probably an English language teacher. I don't remember the exact title of the book, but I remember this book was published in the US, telling authors wildlife encounters at Yellowstone National Park. By then, I had only started learning and taken required English language classes for about 2 years. It was the very first time for me to read a book written by English-speaking author. Despite my beginning level language proficiency, I could understand most of the content thanks to the author's plain language and easy to follow writing style. And I was connected to a world that was completely different from my daily life. In retrospect, that riveting moment might have shaped my decision to major in English language and minor in French language. And eventually, I decided to come to the US and pursue a PhD degree in applied linguistics. Coming to the US and pursuing a PhD degree in applied linguistics was another eye-opening experience for me. I was enrolled in a program that trains world language educators and scholars. Outside the usual busy student life filled with intensive reading and writing, we somehow managed to find time to hold regular gatherings for faculty and students who were from all over the world. Through these gatherings, I was exposed to a sea of world cultures: Turkish coffee, French fondue, and Belizean music, Bollywood movies, and even Mexican tequila, you name it. So in other words, I was not only studying linguistics, but also the world-rich cultural traditions, along with my fellow students. Most importantly, I experienced a second eureka moment in my life, despite conspicuous differences. And there were even more deep down connections and commonalities among those various cultures. Regardless of cultural backgrounds, we all give blessings when a new life is born. And we feel joyful when a friend graduates from college or gets promoted. And we are worried when a loved one gets sick, and saddened when a family member passes away. And the connections are even vividly reflected in our daily life language use. For instance, Americans would describe a challenging task as to look for a needle in a haystack, whereas the Chinese people would say 大海捞针, to fetch a needle in a sea. So in both cultures, people think finding a needle is a very challenging task, but Americans have to do it in a haystack. But Chinese people have to do it in a sea. And when being startled, English-speaking people usually say, "Oh my God," and Chinese people usually say, 我的天 translation is oh my heaven. So you can see the cultural similarities there. So in general, the more you interact with people from different cultures, the more you realize, wow, we're not that different. After all, whether we are from a country that is more economically advanced or one that is more religiously conservative, we all live a human life and very possibly share somewhat similar aspirations in our limited lifespans. Now, as a university professor, having worked in the Department of Modern Languages at 2 universities for a combined 15 years, I have observed that people with prior second language learning experience tend to be more ready to notice cultural diversity and also connections in their surroundings and recognize the necessity of inclusiveness. Some people may argue that traveling the world is good enough to develop a keen eye for cultural differences and connections. But without learning a language that is different from our mother tongue, one would rarely experience the uniquely humble and vulnerable feeling that can prompt us to develop deep connections for and also genuine compassion for people who are different from us. So if there were a high quality Google Translate 25 years ago, I might still have been able to learn about the Yellowstone National Park and how a grizzly bear attack would be like. However, I bet it would never have encouraged me to come to US, meet and make friends with people from all over the world, and then develop a deep sense for who I am and come to an understanding of how connected the world we all are, regardless of our cultural differences. Learning a second language not only opens the door to a new world, it can also help us build meaningful kinships with people in this new world. I think this experience would never be replaced by any cool apps or fancy gadgets.